Good evening. My name's Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us once again Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
Hello out there in TV land.
We often ask for some witticism to start our discussion. I don't know if you have any stored up. Is a witticism in the offing, or shall we just walk past that base?
Well, I've got a witticism for you, being
Okay.
the Ian Fleming fan that I am.
Yes.
Goldfinger once told James Bond, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, the third time it's enemy action.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll write that one down. That's enemy action. Well, we certainly have a lot of enemies in the world, and we have a lot of things to discuss. And we're in the middle of this electoral cycle. We have all the shell fire happening, all the tension in the country. And the process would be certainly helped with a educated public that could parse their way through all the misinformation that's there. And you mentioned earlier, which was rather a good confession, that you devoted your life to making this process work better, so to speak, civics. You wanted the country to go forward in a benign, happy, meritorious way. And can you now comment on how successful that is, your ambitions?
Looking around, not really. I will say that in retrospect, that what does seem a very self-serving comment, and I think to a degree is entirely true, but I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy teaching. I'm a teacher from a family of teachers.
Right, yes.
Another aphorism, and I think it was Mark Twain who said this, is if you pick a job you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's clever.
And that pretty much describes me as me in teaching. I get the sense that describes you in surgery.
Well, yes.
I mean, obviously there are aspects of the job you don't like, but
yes, there are good things and there are bad things in work and in life.
Yes.
Well, keep talking there.
But
Buck.
yeah,
we'll chat some.
I do feel that approximately since the time I came on the scene, we're living in sort of a decline and fall of the Roman Empire stage, that I see the wheels slowly coming off. And I think I've talked about this before. It's sort of like it's like King Lear, or like the opening of Gibbon's book, that at the beginning of the play Lear and at the very beginning of Gibbon's book, Rome seems to be on top of everything.
All the legions they
have
have from wherever to everywhere, right?
And the rest of it is just how the wheels come off. And so America, we were the richest, most powerful country in all of human history about the time coming out of World War II. And now we're tearing ourselves apart. We've got a $34 trillion national debt that just keeps on going up because nobody wants to deal with it. We've got massive demographic changes that are affecting the fundamentals of whatever it was that America was built on. We've got 350 million people at each other's throats because there's not enough living space. I'm not at all sanguine about where things go.
Well, what a litany of problems.
Yes.
And what could be, obviously we have issues, what could be done to make things better? And we have the election coming up. And to me, I'd like to see some more candidates. I hope nobody. Nobody heard that out there. I hope nobody.
Not in the presidential race.
No. So we have the system has produced two people with obvious good points. I'll say that, and bad points. And
name some good points for me, because I'm having trouble discerning. That you couldn't find with any other run-of-the-mill.
They seem to be able to tie their shoes often successfully. They walk down the street often.
I don't know.
They listen. At least one of them does what their advisors tell them, and the other one, unfortunately, doesn't take advice. So that's.
Although I will say, any silver linings you're looking for in these two presumptive candidates, because we're recording this right after New Hampshire. But I'm reminded of what Peter Kraft, who teaches philosophy at Boston College, once said, and I think he was passing this on from someone else, but he said if he had a choice of being governed by random names picked from the Harvard faculty directory versus the first 500 names in the Cambridge phone book, he'd pick the latter.
Of course.
And you
I
just
would
pick somebody
too.
off the street and they would do.
I would do the
not,
same.
Not to pick on Harvard, but I mean,
I would do
yeah,
the same.
So,
Well, I mean, yes, we have these defects. What can be done? And we started off discussing civics. Is the American public educated enough, point number one, on the nuances of the decisions that the country faces? And point number two, is journalism actually helping or hurting the process? Because what seems to me is going on is the way the system works is each party, and there are only two of them, and we could say maybe we need more, but that's what we're stuck with. And I think a lot of it is the way that you get on your name on ballots. And it's said to me right now that you could not really put a third party out right at this point because you have to register everywhere in the state. So we're stuck with what we're stuck with, and each of the party raises money from stakeholders, the people that, well, you could say on the left, well, maybe unions, and on the right, maybe petroleum processors, whatever. So each group sends money in, and with the money, each of the groups put together some kind of apparatus to, number one, bring out the vote, whatever that means, and point number two, to actually sort of do propaganda, Goebbels-like propaganda. I mean, one, if you're in the electoral season is upon us, and if one looks at the ads that are out there, they're really quite unbalanced, and maybe that's normal, but it would be like, this is, use Colgate, I don't know, skin conditioner or whatever, and the same kind of music, the same kind of story, and then the people that produce this are masters of manipulation. So the whole way that advertising works is to sort of not necessarily to go forward with the truth, but just to arrange the information so that the public will gobble it up. And so we're in that circumstance. What do you?
I'm reminded of a line from The Untouchables. I don't know if you ever saw The Untouchables or not. I thought it was an extremely well done movie.
Yes.
And for some reason it seems to have dropped off the radar in the
yes.
decades since it was produced. But of course, it's set in Prohibition and Al Capone, and there's a scene when this mobster is in this speakeasy, and the owner is saying, why are you trying to make me buy green beer? It's not any good. And the mobster says it's not supposed to be good, it's supposed to be bought. So, yes, well, you're taking us in a couple of directions there. I mean, the political parties, on the one hand, you could say that it is roughly akin to the adversarial system that we have in the American legal and judicial system, that the idea that nobody has a stronger interest in making his case than someone who's personally affected. And so you have these two combatants duke it out with the referees overseeing it to make sure they play fair, at least theoretically. And in this struggle, the truth comes out. Now, that's built on a lot of suppositions,
yes.
Especially if we move it into the political arena and out of the judicial arena. And as I grow older, I become less and less convinced there's that much of a difference. But the idea of, if you're living in a Republican system, little r Republican system, where the people are ultimately in charge, they have to know the truth, and in order to know the truth,
tough word,
they've got to spend time learning about how things work and being able to sort the good from the bad. Now, I mean, Milton says, of course, whoever knew truth to be put to the worse in a free and open encounter, but those are two big words. And when you are going to play dirty, then it becomes, I won't say it becomes impossible, but it becomes harder, especially with modern technology. And I remember when G. Gordon Liddy spoke here on Mercer campus back, I think it was in 1984. Very controversial that that Mercer would invite him, but it went through. And I found Liddy a charismatic speaker and all the more terrifying because of it. But I remember him saying, look, every 4 years you have a contest for the most powerful office in the world. Do you really think people are going to play fair to get control of that office? And that's a chilling thought if you think about it.
Well, those are comments that are worthy of inspection.
Yes.
I'll start off by saying, well, okay, so we have this is like a courtroom. Each side is challenging the other and slinging a substantial amount of mud. But who's the judge? Who is the person that keeps order and then remarks, well, you're just whatever, that's just nuts. And I think the TV networks and newspapers have sort of people that are try and assess what's true or not, because so much stuff is tossed out there that may or may not be true. And that's a very tricky process. And I think the Biden administration wanted to put in some kind of arbitrator of truth. They were going to appoint one of their buddies to say, well, this is true or this is not true. And if it's not true, then we'll stop it from being said. And so that's very worrisome. I will also toss this card in the deck, as per C. Gordon Liddy. The other countries are enmeshed in what's going on, and it's not just Russia or the Ukraine. It's any country that has an interest in our good offices. I would say Canada, Mexico, our trading partners, China. You could say Israel. You could say the Arab nations, the Western European nations. Anybody that has any interest in what's going on here, I think tries to do something. Another point to remember is that there are millions of dual citizens in the country, and so it's easy enough to have their agents try and accomplish their ends. And I think recently that happened in New York with Turkish dual citizens trying to opine. I think the mayor of New York. Different things happen, and I think also the same thing may have happened in New Jersey. Money flows in, all kinds of things are happening, and so what I'm getting at is there a way that the citizens of the country can just at least have in their mind, or maybe they do, this is just, these charges are outrageous, this is going on, and many times people, they see the same picture. Well, let's say we have illegal immigrants crossing the border, and then we have former President Trump as a convicted rapist, I think. He's there, he's going back, and here's a picture of the rape victim. There's your president there, on and on. I mean, so just these issues that you could say are there, but a bigger story is, what does a voter really need to know? I mean, you're going to assume that all these defects are present. What are the important things for the voter to understand? Is it immigration? Is it the inflation? Is it the national debt? And do the candidates actually respond to their plans to do anything about it? I doubt they do. Really.
My immediate response is, I mean, if you are self-interested, the first answer is it's the economy, stupid.
Yes.
And it's remarkable how few people get that. But that doesn't solve it, because you can get a short-term gain to the economy by perhaps doing something that causes long-term problems. I think, for instance, the Congress's regular practice of selling off some of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Well, that's the president. That's the president's. The president, not Congress.
To short-term keep the prices down, but it's depleting our strategic reserve. So. And one problem is just how big and pervasive government is in the industrial era. That 200 years ago, when government wasn't as pervasive and didn't control lives as much, it was easier to understand, and consequently the voter didn't need to know as much. But today, I mean, what is the list of issues? I mean, there's the integrity of the election process, there's the national debt, there's our trade policy with China, there's illegal immigration, there are environmental issues, there's the nuclear threat, there's homeland security, or, what about anthrax or nerve gas that's being cooked up out there? There are overseas commitments that we have. Do we want Ukraine in NATO or not? I mean, you could stay awake 24/7, 365, absorbing news from the most reputable sources and never be able to get enough to make an informed choice. As for whether the politicians can influence it, that the bureaucratic machinery is so massive that it's got an inertia of its own, and it's really hard to divert it in just one or two presidential terms. Now, maybe congressmen can do it because, of course, no term limits there, but you're just one voice among many. So,
well, it's so we have many participants in the national sausage factory. Everyone we're trying to make the country work, and it's actually more of a vexing problem than earlier. And we had you mentioned the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, which might be read with profit.
Indeed.
And I'll make one comment about it, that one of the things that many people have opined on why the Roman Empire fell. Well, many people. And actually, I think it's fair to say it's a combination of factors, many factors. You could say, well, there were no real Romans by the 5th century. They were all inhabitants of the Roman Empire, but not part of the Roman nation, if you want to say that. And the other thing that I think of consequence is the amount of money that the Romans spent on fighting Persia. I mean, I think that's a little known, little appreciated story. And when we look at the Middle East these days, we imagine it's some kind of obscure place, kind of like Afghanistan. I mean, no offense to the Afghanis, way out there somewhere. Persia's way out there, but actually, it's a tremendous history, thousands of years of history, and a co-equal of the Roman Empire. And they really fighting Persia, in many ways, was the last straw in the 4th century. All the money was gone, and the tax system could not produce enough money to really, that's at least one cause of the problem, so enough money to keep the defense issues intact. And you could say, among many things going on now, if you talk about projection of American power to defend Western values, I mean, that would be that's a historic, I think, responsibility of the country, and we've taken it on in the last century. We took this responsibility on, and indeed, we went through this many victories after perilous struggles, finally victories, and then the enemy lay at our feet. Advanced Britannia, kind of Winston Churchill's. The enemy is crushed at our feet. The Soviet Union and communism are crushed and at our feet here. Okay, well, and that was how many years ago? 3 decades, 4 decades ago, and now we're in this situation where our abilities to, number one, understand what Western values are. What are our values? What are they? And you mentioned it's the economy, stupid. The idea being asserted there is that the values are basically, reasonably so, selfish. I want plenty of money, and if a politician can give me plenty of money, okay, that's the normal thing. And then I believe who asserted that? It was a Democratic politician, is that right? Who said it's the economy, stupid?
It was probably James Carville.
It was.
But he didn't say it in those terms. That's the truncated.
He was more polite with it.
Well, I don't think of Carville as being a polite person.
No, he's
but,
not. No.
But
Did he go to law school? I'll ask that.
I think he probably did. I don't
probably
know,
did, yes.
But yes, it originated with Carville, and there is wisdom there.
But okay, so just demarcating Western values right now. I mean, what are Western values?
Yes.
I mean,
And I
is
wanna-
it woke values?
Well, I want to jump in there for a
Yes.
minute because the Western the Western
Canon, if you
notion,
wanna say it that, yes.
and talking about it earlier, you were sort of Kipling-esque. So I will sort of sarcastically talk about the white man's burden here, if we want to, and that's been
Well-
the thing that Europe has, through an accident of history. Europe got the technology to take over the world, and as part of that, European civilization looked down on anything that wasn't European, and white man's burden.
Or Christian.
So,
I mean, in
well,
other words, I think you
I
can't
think
forget
it's-
the Christianity part of it. I mean, that's a fair statement. But nevertheless, the way the West worked out problems. If you think about what the Western world has done, I mean, compare with anything else. Liberty, science, law courts, the concern for other people.
But you're coming.
But
You're coming from a social bias here. I mean, as a product of this, you naturally see all these things as good. But when you say the word liberty in the American sense of the word, this is anathema to other systems throughout the world, and they will argue with equal vehemence if they are sitting here that liberty has been tremendously destructive of people and property throughout history.
Well, if you have, I mean, from that flows a balance of power. So power gets balanced, and there's been a long history of trying to get things worked out in the West, and many, the 7 billion people that are out there in the world trying to work their way through the dark, they're obviously very meritorious, they're good, there are lots of good things there, and on and on. However, they've emerged only recently from a system that was not as agile or as powerful as the Western world, and so these values. Are you challenging the notion that Western?
I'm trying to broaden your horizons. That one of the reasons that these non-white races took so long to emerge.
What is this non-white? I'm not saying non-white. I'm saying Western.
These other cultures, but
other
it is. I mean, you want to learn about the modern world today. It's talking about the browning of the world and the browning of America. And yes, these non-European cultures very often are not white. And one reason, not by no means the only reason, but one reason that they have taken so long to emerge is because of this word liberty. And you are taking, in the past, how you've talked about taking a wonderful word like bread or bread for the masses or liberté.
What words can do. Yes.
You're taking this word and infusing it with all that you see as noble, but that same word has also been used with great sincerity by Western Europe to mean liberty to ransack, to pillage, to oppress foreign cultures, to exploit them, to commit genocide. And you can't just take the good and say, oh, well, the West has brought liberty and liberty is great.
Well, go ahead. Let's parse this out a little bit.
Ahead.
And so what I'm asserting here is we're going in, why is the U.S., my reference was responding to your initial comment, Gibbon's decline and fall of the Roman Empire, this is what happened, all these bad events and on, and then King Lear, and then the crash. And so the idea is the nation crashing? And so I started out by making 2 points. Number one is a certain self-confidence about the merit of our values. So it's true enough that anybody can find Swiss cheese, holes in the national cheese, so to speak.
Yes.
There are many problems that have happened, generally encompassed with the use of power. So if one says this, a big dog, even a big dog trying to be righteous, it's inevitable that exercising power is going to have some negative impact. And it's fair enough that's what happened. However, what is, in my thought, about one reason the national power, many people might say it is in decline, is the absence of self-confidence to defend the values, and not white values. These are not white values. I mean, you could say they're ethical, they just are there, and it's an open banquet for anyone. I mean, it's not an exclusive restaurant, so to speak. Anyone.
Was it an open banquet for a member of the Igbo tribe who gets kidnapped and dragged over here and forced to work on a sugarcane plantation?
Well, I was making the comment about uses of power, and then people can repent. And so if you look at the whole Western story, the sense of repentance is really out there. And so one of the things that comes out of this, from my thinking, is that people are constantly trying to do the right thing, the moral thing. They're aware of all the difficulties about exercising appropriate decisions. So, okay, right, I got that. Mm-hmm. And one can accept right away tremendous evil has taken place. And if you really got into what happened in West Africa, starting the 15th, 16th centuries, the Islamic people were coming in, and it was just the way humans are. So the evil that took place, certainly it needed a enzyme mm-hmm. to make it work as it did. So it needed, however, the instinct to go out and actually take people and put them in bondage was a universal one. And so just to continue with that, you could say in Western Europe, a very common thing. And you could even make this case. In some ways, that continues in a less obvious fashion. So if we're I said this before, Indonesian tennis shoe factory, where all these terrible things are going on, people are doing this and that, and we're not going to have any pollution here, but and we'll just offload all our detritus into other mm-hmm. countries. So the evil persists. It still continues, and trying to find our way through it requires, in my opinion, examining and not being humiliated and losing self-confidence about our values. And so, all right, where is the idyllic system that's emerged from the other 7 billion people out there that you could say this is really a great idea? Is it Cuba? Is it I don't know, Western China, where the different minorities are getting knocked off? Is it in Armenia with the Azerbaijanis there? Is it the system in Turkey where these things happen? Is it in West Africa now where these things are being turned over? Is it in Argentina, where you could say another kind of shoe dropped? I mean, there are many, many places where the situation is very dire. And now I just wanted to get past a defense of Western values and then get into power.
But when you start talking about how that this is basic in human nature and that everybody does it, it suddenly starts sounding to me like you're saying not that we are better than everybody else, but that we're no worse.
We personally are no better than anyone else. We are as individuals. We have. You could say we're sinful creatures. The rhinoencephalon.
I agree with you there.
All right, so we're.
And by the way, if you want to get a group shot here, these shoes I'm wearing were made probably in a sweatshop somewhere in the Middle East. So I'm indicting myself.
So you've taken a great sip out of the cup of evil there.
Yes,
but okay,
of course I have.
Which we all have.
What
I'm making the case is this Western wisdom and knowledge and efforts is worthy of respect. And so if you totally lose that, if in fact people say, look, I think it's great in Cuba, why don't we have a system where Honduras is great, or hey, look how good Red China's doing. That's great, man. They're economically, whatever it is, on, and or pick your country as a role model, and at the same time ignore what we have. I think it's reasonable to try and ask other cultures and countries and histories what good ideas they have, and they have some good ones, but it's not that their ideas are exclusively good and ours are exclusively bad, as that seems to be the general ideology. Now, I won't get too much past that, but I'll just make one last comment on power. So if you say, why is the country down, or at least perceived to be that way, I would say point number one is the Western, no one is quite sure what Western values are, whatever they are. People, and then if they're probably pretty suspect anyway, and probably the best thing is to just say, we're so wicked, we don't have, there's no reason that we have any role in the world, and we're supplicants here, waiting for some kind of better truth to appear from wherever it is, and we'll surrender our truth, which includes religious truth. We're going to just forget all our efforts to do the right thing and imagine that we're not good enough to aspire to that. And okay.
Well, I will say, I hope you understand what I'm trying to do here
yes.
is essentially the approach that you have taken towards the American judicial system. I think that if there is a last best hope on earth today, it is still the United States. But I simply have to point out that I think there's an excellent argument to be made that many of the inequities and really bad stuff that is part of the Western tradition is not despite its notions of liberty or progress, but they are baked into those very notions. I don't think we can solve that in the next 30 seconds, but my last thought would be
yes.
the cartoon of three fish swimming along, and the small fish swimming along thinking the world is not just. A bigger fish swimming along behind it getting ready to swallow it whole saying, sometimes the world is just. And the biggest fish of all behind getting ready to swallow both of them saying, the world is just.
Well, yes, I mean, there's a lot to get into there.
Yes.
And it's actually a rather important conversation, in my opinion, and it's one that's not too commonly discussed, I don't think. I mean, mostly when these conversations took place, it's trying to insult or demean your opponent. And that was not my intention in this at all.
No.
I hope you
I will say that, and I think this is getting back to our original conversation, that if you listen to mass politics, if you look at where the two parties are going right now, if you look at the forces that are driving the two parties, it seems to be heavily polarized. I would say the MAGA people are saying there is absolutely nothing wrong with any Western values or American values. It's the immigrants and it's the darker people that are coming in and messing up our values. Whereas in the Democratic ranks, the 1619 Project sees absolutely nothing redeeming about Western values whatsoever. There is no critical consideration of the pluses and minuses. It's just polarized.
Well, yeah, it's time for another discussion. Thank you for your good insights.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.